If you're a business owner or a business leader and you're managing all the functions of your C-suite, subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and let's start talking about how you can make the most use of your time so that you can enjoy life and keep the dream alive. Welcome to another episode of Fractional with Chris Capone and Associates. Today I have Dane Scalise here. Dane, thanks for coming.
Chris, very excited.
Yeah, man, the stars aligned and we're able to get you in.
Hey, look, the stars aligned because you said be here at this place at this time, and I said done.
Awesome.
There all day.
Yeah, man, I've been looking forward to this one. We haven't like Rob was saying, I had to move my podcast to later in the day because people were a little bewildered by my drinking. No,
Okay,
I'm just kidding.
Right.
No, this is our we're here late in the day for everybody listening. But
1 p.m.
We've got we got a little bourbon here that we're gonna pour and we're gonna talk about business and politics and all that good stuff. So I got this little kit that I've learned,
Nice,
that I've kind of dialed in. It's nothing special, but I got a bag of ready-made ice right here. So here, take a glass.
good deal.
We'll do a
Thank
little,
you, sir.
Yeah, man. We'll do a little bourbon on the rocks. And for those that aren't,
And
watch-
this bourbon is a prop bourbon, right?
this is a prop. Yeah. No, what it is it's Prohibition style. 'Cause when
Okay.
we're hanging out with Capone, we're gonna drink
Right.
some Prohi.
Right, yeah.
So, do you want to grab your own ice?
Yeah,
Or-
absolutely. Thank you.
This day and age, never know what the hell's going on out there.
I'm not fancy.
Cool. All right. Well, while we do this, Dane, tell us, give us a little intro. I mean, you are a lawyer.
Yep.
You are in the insurance game, and
Yep.
you're also the county commissioner. How do you do all three of those things?
Hopefully reasonably well with some high degree of organization and a tremendous degree of patience and tolerance from my family. But yes, those are some of the things that I do. I guess it's mostly what fills my day. Let me start by saying really the most important thing to me, not trying to be too cool for school or anything. I'm a husband and I'm a father.
That's awesome.
My wife and I have been married for 10 years. Her name's Katya. Great person. Supports me in every which way that she possibly could and is a terrific mom to our kids. We have two sons, age 8 and 5. They are really good at a number of things. Do some wrestling, do some swimming, do some soccer. Great at schoolwork. Also great at beating on each other a little bit.
That sounds about right.
Brothers want to do.
Two boys,
I have 3 younger brothers, so I know a little bit about that.
Oh,
but
my
they're
gosh.
actually they're some sweethearts. And I'm really proud to be a family man because I came from a family that I'm really proud of, and I'm trying hard to help to recreate in the household that I grew up in. Just what I had in terms of my upbringing, and so far so good. Some challenges, obviously, that are out there. I know you're newly in this world.
I know
right?
it really hits home when you're saying that because everybody loves to talk about their family, right?
Yeah.
And I totally get it, but it's much more now. I've got a 5-week-old boy at home, and it changes everything in the best way that I could have ever imagined.
Well, I mean, we all have things that motivate us. It could be your wife,
you
it
a
could be
little
your
glass
husband.
here.
Yeah, please, thank you. Your kids, your pets, your parents, your siblings. But something has got to motivate us to wake up every day and do whatever it is that we've committed ourselves to doing.
Heck,
So
yeah.
it's not the same for everybody, but this is what ended up working out for me. And it does definitely motivate me to do the best work possible in those realms that you described.
Yep.
I'll give you a little bit of background about me. If you don't mind, I'll start.
Before we do that,
Yeah, go ahead.
cheers, brother.
Oh, great. Cheers.
Good to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah.
That's the good stuff.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Whoa. Lucky duck.
All
Beginning
right.
at the
Yep.
beginning, I'm from Morganton, North Carolina, which is the western part of North Carolina. It's between Hickory and Asheville on Interstate 40.
Yep.
And lived there until I was 18 years old, went to Freedom High School. Actually, my 20-year high school reunion is this weekend. And going to try to make it back. We'll see. Just had to travel back that way yesterday. Maybe we'll talk about that in a little
Definitely
bit.
want to talk about that. Yep.
But the plan is to go over there this weekend, see all of my friends from back home, and figure out what everybody's been up to for the last little bit. I really had a great high school, a lot of friends that I've stayed in touch with.
Yeah.
After high school, I went a little bit further down Interstate 40 to UNC Greensboro.
Yep.
I was an English and history major, and as may be the case for other English and history majors, at the end of their time in school, one says to oneself, what am I going to do with this English degree, this history degree?
Yeah.
I did consider becoming a professor for some period of time.
I could see
Also
that.
considered becoming a filmmaker. Whenever I come into a studio like this, I'm just astounded at the work that goes into making something like this podcast happen.
Heck
The
yeah.
equipment that you have to have, the talent that you have to have. I know these folks don't want recognition, but shout out to the folks that are making this happen. Appreciate y'all.
Yeah, Robin Signal Fire makes it easy. We just get to show up with bring your own bourbon, bring your own whatever, and have some fun.
Rob and I have been knowing each other for a good while. He's a great guy, multi-talented, really knows how to network, really knows how to communicate. So I'm glad that you guys got hooked
yeah.
up.
Yeah.
After graduating from UNCG, I went a little bit further down Interstate 40 to Chapel Hill for law school.
Yep.
I practiced law out there for 2 years. After finishing law school was 3 years. So I was there for 5 years and ultimately had kind of a crazy thing happen to me. There was this guy, not so crazy, it happens to lots of people, but it was crazy at the time.
Right.
There was this guy who I was working for, and we had a fairly good-sized firm, 20 lawyers, something thereabouts. And in 2012, he determined that he was going to run for governor of North Carolina. And he basically said to everybody at the firm, yeah, I'm shutting the firm down. So, see you guys later. Thanks for the time that we spent together.
Gosh.
A little bit unexpected, a little bit scary. I didn't know what I was going to do. I actually didn't like the job terribly much, although it did give me a lot of exposure and experience. As
Yeah.
a, for instance, I started out doing a bunch of different types of litigation. I did some medical negligence work, but I also represented the city of Durham and their police department in connection with, for instance, the Duke Lacrosse matter. There was a
No
big
way.
civil lawsuit that was associated with that. I did
yeah.
some work for town of Wake Forest with some land use issues. So I got a wide range of experience and notably got to travel around the country for basically that 2 year of practice doing depositions.
Wow.
And that gave me a lot of exposure and experience into what law looks like. It's a lot, yes, about drafting documents and doing research. But at the end of the day, there's also somebody that has to go do depositions. And depositions are where you go and ask people questions.
Right.
And try to learn what happened in the case that you're litigating. And then ultimately it culminates in a trial. And I had an opportunity to do a number of bench trials, which is before a judge, but also a jury trial, 3 weeks long. It was in Gaston County.
No way.
Didn't win, but didn't lose. Split jury.
I could see you in there just going to town, just killing it.
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of stress. It was a really important case to us. Obviously, for any of my clients, what is important to them is important to me. But it really gave me an excellent opportunity to see the lifespan of a lawsuit.
Yeah.
Whenever somebody brings in a case to you and says, "Here's what I'm working on. Here's what I have going on. How can we get to where I want to be?" And following that thing all the way through to its conclusion, which could include an appeal.
Right.
But that part was good. The part that was not good was, again, a big surprise. I no longer have a job, and he didn't even give me 2 weeks notice. I think he gave me like 8 days notice. And he actually
Did you like a severance package?
no, because actually he said to me,
Legally.
yeah, he said, I'm not really firing you. I'm putting you on furlough, right? It was that's a nice way of saying you're being fired and you're not getting a severance package.
Unbelievable.
Well, I'm not going to say his name. Not my favorite guy in the whole world.
Yeah.
But I actually appreciate him and credit him for giving me some exposure and experience. I think he was really interested in politics and less in practicing law at the time that I
Yep.
got involved in 2010. So it actually was a good thing for me because basically he didn't want to do the practice of law. So he basically said, "Hey, look, you do it." And I said, "Well, I don't really know how to." And he said, "Well, go figure it out." So it was one of those classic sink or swim situations.
Yeah.
And maybe somebody who was more prudent in their own practice wouldn't have had me do that, but it worked out great for me and I got good results for our clients.
And he probably trusted you.
Yeah, I
mean,
guess so.
I guess.
I don't know.
It's
I mean,
amazing.
I think that it's probably something along those lines, some version of those things. The other piece that was wonderful is that there was a partner over there that was a really good guy. He also got impacted by this, went over to another firm and reached out to me. And this is one of the things that was those critical moments in your career where he didn't have to do this to me, but he knew that I was floundering. And he called me afterward and he said, "Look, I landed at this other firm. I'm going to send you work until you can get on your feet."
Wow.
So he didn't have to do that. He didn't have a position to hire me over there, but basically I think more or less out of his own billables, he cut me in. And it really demonstrated to me that there are some people out there that are really good people. And if you have and I know that already, you knew that already, but it's nice to see it in action.
Absolutely.
So whenever he gave me that opportunity, I said, man, I got to make sure that I pay stuff like this forward.
Yep.
In the meantime, while I was doing all of that, basically I had an opportunity to move down to the coast with my then girlfriend, now wife. And we said, we're going to just sort of beach bum it and do some work remotely until I figure out where I'm going to go. I'm probably going to go to Raleigh. I'm probably going to go to Charlotte and work for a firm there. And I was in the middle of applying to jobs in firms
Yeah.
in those areas. And, we'll just see what happens. This will work out in the meantime, living at the beach. It's so cool.
Yeah.
Around that time, I think people were still not quite clear on whether or not Wilmington was a jobs location. I will say definitively now and
Now
any
it is.
number of times during this presentation and elsewhere, it is.
Yep.
This is a place where people can come and do some work of whatever variety that we want. It's changed a lot. Natalie English, Chamber,
Yep.
any number of other people, Wilmington Business Development, Cliff, they're doing great work. And of course, there are those entrepreneurs that have dedicated themselves to making this area something meaningful.
Yep.
The Live Oak Banks of the world. That really has changed the game. But it's also not just about the big companies. It's about a bunch of entrepreneurs like us.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I think that brings me forward in the story a little bit to this opportunity to work with a firm here in Wilmington. It was a small firm that had basically a need for an associate with some experience, somebody who had some deposition experience, some trial experience, knew his way, her way around a case without having to be taught everything from the ground up.
Right. Right.
So the guy that I worked for, I'm happy to say, his name's Chris Terrio. He's still a lawyer that practices in this area. And we'll probably talk about him again because he's a part of what I do in my legal practice. He has his own law firm. I have my own law firm, but we share some of the work together and end up doing a lot of stuff for a lot of people in town. But we worked together for a number of years, 3 years, I think. And then I decided it was time for me to go and do my own gig.
Right.
Started my own firm.
Nice.
That was cool. But then my first foray into politics came into focus totally unexpectedly. I received a phone call. There was a guy here in town. He's deceased now, but he was a big guy who helped a lot of people. Me as one of them. His name's Parks Griffin, and he called me and he said the Governor McCrory is looking to appoint somebody to the North Carolina Industrial Commission. There's a position called Deputy Commissioner, and essentially it is a position where you're a traveling judge over workers' compensation and state tort claim act matters.
Interesting. Okay.
So you're like a judge, but you don't wear a robe. You handle basically insurance disputes. But you're bound by judicial code of ethics. You got to travel around the state and hopefully help people to make fair decisions on whether or not a work comp claim should be paid out. Or sometimes I even went to Central Prison up in Raleigh, and I determined whether or not an inmate who had a grievance against the state of North Carolina should be compensated in connection with that. It was some wild stuff.
That's wild.
So I didn't expect to be doing this governmental position, this political position, but it was a cool opportunity to be a judge at age 32 and to basically travel around the state and try to bring to bear on each and every situation a fair and just result, not letting my own bias and emotion get into the equation. Easier said than done, right? Do you have a challenge with that? Is it something that...
It is something that you have to... It's about having awareness.
Yeah.
Knowing that... And it's the same thing with ego, right? Like, having the awareness that you are... Human nature is that you're going to be biased.
Right.
Human nature is that, we have an ego. And I just... part of my, daily routine in the morning is, everybody's got their routine, but part of it is all right, just, be humble, work hard, and do what's right.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds super cheesy, but it's honestly what I have to do to keep me on in between the lines.
It's a good reminder that it doesn't matter if you're acting as a lawyer, if you're acting as a judge, if you're acting as a CPA, if you're acting as a construction worker, whatever you're doing, you're going to have those moments where you say, "Hey, am I letting my worst self get in the way of my best self?"
Yep.
And we obviously don't want to do that ever. And we especially don't want to do it in a context of being a judge because there's a written record and then people can look back on it and say, you done goofed. But I think it also applies to filing taxes and whatever else that everybody's doing.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That was a wild thing. And come 2020, I had 2 years left on a 6-year term. And I was... I guess I was happy in the sense that I liked the work that I was doing, but because I was bound by the judicial code of ethics, I couldn't really do anything else other than be this judge.
Yeah.
I couldn't advocate for people. Advocacy is really important to me.
Yep.
So I said to myself, well, what's next? You know, I dumped my practice so that I could take on this job.
So you stopped? Yeah, that was a full-time job.
Yeah, no,
Got it.
I mean, yeah, let me make clear, in order to take this job on and get that salary and travel around the state, being a judge and
Yeah.
having people say your honor, which is cool, but it like wears off after like day 3. It's not
Right.
that big of a deal.
Day 3.
I had to leave my law practice behind. I was not allowed to practice law. You're prohibited from practicing law while you serve as a judicial officer in North Carolina.
Got it.
So my clients
it.
were all gone. I was like, well, what's going to happen? Maybe I get reappointed. Maybe I don't. Do I even want to get reappointed? Do I want to go do something else? I didn't know. I was at an interesting inflection point of my life. Part of the reason this job was good is because my first son was born right as I was getting rolling with this job.
Yeah.
And I had an opportunity, because it was like a steady 9 to 5 job,
Right.
to
Right.
go in, do my 9 to 5,
Yep.
and otherwise spend time with my wife and kids.
Yep.
And then I had a second son with my wife, and you know, I really got to, over the course of those 4 years, spend some good time with my kids that I don't know that with my current schedule I would have been able to appreciate as much. But I knew that I wanted to make a transition. I wasn't exactly sure what. One of the big and important things to me, and I encourage all the folks that are watching this to do it if they're not already doing it, if they're interested at all in networking, expanding their network, start volunteering.
Yep.
Start going to nonprofit meetings. Become a member of the chamber. Become a member of WDI. There's a lot of different things that you can do to get plugged into this community.
Yep.
Look, all communities are basically the same and basically different. It depends on where you go, and we could go down the litany of items that are the same and different everywhere. But truly, Wilmington, New Hanover County, this is a place where if you want to get plugged in, you can get plugged in very easily. And the best way for you to do it is to start volunteering,
Yep.
start attending nonprofit meetings, giving back to your community. And you're not going to get some immediate return on your investment. And that's not why you should be doing it.
Nope.
But you're going to make some friends. You're going to make some contacts that I promise you are going to end up giving you business in the long run.
Yep.
And that's what happened to me, because there was a guy that I had done a bunch of nonprofit work with. His name's Hank Estep. He owns an insurance brokerage company called Griffin Estep, which Griffin is actually Parks Griffin. That was his partner, who is deceased.
It's starting to come full circle
And
now. Okay.
Hank
Yep.
Estep,
Yep.
after Parks died, unfortunately, he took over the company completely and has a great staff. And essentially, this business is a business that provides employee benefits to about 200 companies, institutions throughout southeastern North Carolina.
Okay.
So some of them are little. We got 2-3 people in a company, and then we've got up to 2,000.
Wow.
And so Hank has a lot of passion for volunteering, as did I. And he said, "Look, you're saying you're not so happy with what you're doing. I could use a lawyer to come on to my business." I said, "Are you really? You want a lawyer? People don't usually want a lawyer, but all right, that's nice to say. Oh, but you'll help me with sales. You'll help me with account management. You'll help me with making sure that our existing clients are taken care of."
Yep.
And I got to tell you, that's one of the things that sold me on the business from the get-go and has kept me there happily ever since then. We are not obsessed with growth.
Right.
We don't really care about whether or not we're getting in new people all the time. We have an amazing block of clients that
Yep.
we are dedicated 1,000% to
That's
making
awesome.
sure that they're happy. And as you might imagine, as a consequence of that, we end up getting a lot of work that comes
Exactly.
from that.
It's
But
a
I mean,
great
if you
philosophy,
can
yeah.
take care of your existing block of whatever business that you have, and I know there's probably some business gurus that would say you got to always be looking for new and whatever. Well, that's not the way we do it.
Yep.
We look out for the folks that we've got in-house, and they don't leave us because we take care of them better than anyone
Well,
else.
I mean, I think a good business guru would say that the best marketing and the most inexpensive marketing that you can do is to do good work for your clients and the power of referrals, because business owners hang out with other business
Yep.
owners and people know other people. So I think that philosophy makes all the sense in the world.
Really brings us to the modern day, because over the last 3.5 years, basically what I did was I resigned my appointment to the Industrial Commission. I reestablished my law firm. Griffin Estep, the insurance brokerage company, hired me as their general counsel and put me in charge of handling some things in their business, including all those items that I described. And
Oh, cool.
in addition to that, represent a bunch of other companies, helping them with contracts, litigation. I primarily represent businesses.
Yep. Okay.
Individuals who have other needs, I can help, sometimes do help, but usually it's an individual who has a business need that comes to me. And as is the case, because I am a solo practitioner, my wife works alongside me. We
Okay.
work together for the this firm that I have, ILM Lawyers. Um, I will have some referral relationships that I will back up against anything.
Mhm.
And I usually stay involved. If somebody brings something to me, because usually they're bringing something to me because they
Just don't
want
want it to
me,
be you. Yep. Exactly.
but I'll be perfectly transparent with them and say, look, here's the part that I'm going to play in this transaction. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and we're going to take it over to my friend who's going to handle the rest of this.
Yep.
But I'm going to manage the process. I'm going to manage the relationship and make sure that you're not gouged in any of your pricing.
Exactly.
And
That's awesome.
it turns out there's a lot of people that are looking for just that, because law, like tax, like anything, is something that is relationship based and trust based. And insurance is certainly that, because really what you're looking for is, who can I give this to and know it's going to be handled? People don't want to think about insurance. They don't want to think about law. They don't want to think about tax, finances.
Yeah, they don't want to think about accounting. You know?
I mean, this is something that's tough for people. But people like us, we go out there, we do it for them, and that's the reason that we have clients. That's the reason we have business, and I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So, I mean, and that's what's you have such an entrepreneurial approach to the way that you do everything. I mean, yeah, you're a lawyer,
hmm
and you studied law and you've been a lawyer, but everything you're saying is much more business oriented, business minded.
I think that's probably accurate. I mean, my mom and dad are entrepreneurs.
Okay.
My grandfather.
What kind of businesses did they do, or what type of?
Yeah, so my grandfather, he ran and owned a furniture manufacturing company in Morganton.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
That's in the
Yeah.
furniture area of North Carolina, right?
Yeah, tons of companies, Drexel, Henredon,
Yeah.
were operating out of Morganton. They're no longer operating there. The market has changed.
Yeah,
So
that
a lot
all-
of things went overseas.
Yep.
And my family, among many other families, attempted to move manufacturing operations overseas whenever the price points became more difficult to
Right.
achieve here in the States. But quality control was not so great back then. Maybe it's better now. I don't know. But it became a difficult proposition. My grandfather got older.
Yep.
He decided that it was time for him to transition out of the business. And my dad, the serial entrepreneur that he is, he's started several companies since then. Mostly within the realm of tile construction and tile technology. He has a company called Tileware Products that he
Interesting.
owns and has created some patents on, sells them all over the world. He and my mom work together, so me and my wife working together, not
How
entirely
cool.
dissimilar from whence I came.
Yeah, yeah. So then from Chapel Hill law firm down to Wilmington, how'd you guys pick Wilmington? You're just like, I kind of want to go hang out at the beach and
Pretty much.
just kind of regroup
Yeah.
and see.
I mean, it just seemed like if I had already come that far on Interstate 40,
Might as well
I
keep
might
going
as well
to the
just
end.
reach the termination point
Yeah.
and go on down to Wilmington and see what happens. It literally was that we came to Wilmington on a lark one weekend while we were still living in Chapel Hill.
Yeah.
And we went downtown, and we had been there any number of times separately and with family, and we went to Barbary Coast and
Yes.
just had a big time.
I bet.
Chris, we had a big time.
Yeah.
And it was one of those moments where we were saying, whenever, and then again, I regret saying this because I don't want this to be what people should take away about Wilmington now. It's not this now. But at the time, I had this perception, whenever I retire, I'm going to move here.
Right.
That was something that people used to say. I don't think people are saying that too much anymore. They shouldn't be if they are, because you don't have to wait to retire to move here. You can move here now. You can start a company now. We've got all kinds of stuff that you can
Absolutely.
lean into. Big, small, medium, whatever you want, you can do business here.
Absolutely, you can. And on that philosophy is, why work your life so that you can retire?
Yeah,
Why not
bad philosophy.
build your lifestyle around something where you're not looking forward to retirement? You're
Right.
looking forward to every day that you get to
That's
go
exactly
out and do
right.
it, right? And you can do that here. That's the beauty of it,
So basically, to answer your question, that had happened fairly recent prior to me getting unceremoniously furloughed. And it was top of mind.
Yeah.
Let's go down there. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Rest is history. as
That's
they say.
awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so now we got to get into county commissioner. How do you go from everything to that to then getting into the seat of county commissioner?
Wow. That that's a story that for me is still just a little bit beyond belief. I can't believe that I'm county commissioner. It's surprising to me. How long now? I guess 7 months into the job.
Yep.
Didn't see it happening. The backstory is both sad
Right.
and happy and all of the things in between. Earlier this year, I had made the determination that I was going to run for Wilmington City Council.
Okay.
And I think Wilmington City Council is great. I have no complaints about Wilmington City Council, but my friend, Margaret Haynes, who's an outgoing city councilwoman, and I spent a lot of time together on Wilmington Downtown Incorporated. It's one of the nonprofits that I spent a lot of time at.
Yep.
Served as chair there. And she said, I'm not running again. And I said, looks like there's an opening. I'm going to try and bring pro-business, reasonable perspective that is not lacking, but is needed. You need as many of those as you can get.
Heck yeah.
Over on city council.
Heck yeah.
And so I started putting together some planning for what I was going to do for running for city council.
Mm-hmm.
I launched a campaign. I filed some paperwork with the Board of Elections. I had a campaign event, and a bunch of my friends came out. It was a really good campaign event. I was kind of surprised at how many of my friends came out
cool.
and were willing to give me money. I said, maybe I'm onto something here.
Yeah.
One of those friends that came out was Deb Hayes.
Yeah.
Deb and I were friends for a very long time. And we did a lot of volunteering together, did a lot of nonprofit work together. And after I finished my term as WDI chair, she became chair, and she won her election to the county commission in 2020. And I was a big supporter of hers whenever she ran for county commission. She had previously run for city council a couple of times prior to that, and I had supported her every single time. So I was ecstatic whenever she became county commissioner, because was a really hardworking person, and a really giving person, and somebody that, I mean, if you wanted to get access to her, she gave you access to her.
That says a lot about someone.
She's a really wonderful person in so many ways. And one of the things, I loved about her was that I don't know how she did it all, but she was up early, up late, and regularly our calls and text messages to one another were at 11, midnight. I mean, that's whenever she could fit it in. But she was really doing good work, and she came to that event that I had and said, I love you. I support you. I think that night after the event, she sent me a bunch of nice text messages. I'm going to do everything I can to get you elected to city council. 2 or 3 days later, I got a phone call from Councilman Luke Waddell at 7:50 in the morning. And this was after I had gotten a phone call from a number of other people earlier that morning that I didn't answer. And I said, if all these people, Bill Rivenbark, et cetera, were calling me, something's not right at prior to 8 a.m. on a Sunday morning.
Right.
And I answered the phone, and Luke said, Deb is dead. And I said, oh, no, that's not possible. I was just with her. And it was, in fact, the case. And we were all devastated. And I'm sure many people in the community who knew her watched and saw that there were so many people that came out for the memoriam that we had for her at Airlie Garden. We planted a huge tree in her honor. And I mean, she's just one of those figures that's irreplaceable. But in fact, is necessarily replaceable on the county commission, because the business of the county must go on.
Right.
So the rules and regs are basically that once this person is no longer serving for whatever reason, they vacate it, they die, unfortunately, it has to be filled. And ultimately, the recommendation for who fills it has to be affirmed by the other county commissioners.
Got it. Okay.
So I think by virtue of me having just announced that I was running for city council, for me having been a pretty active volunteer nonprofit person who also tried really hard to be a work across the aisle guy, I say, politics is an essential part of our life, and generally speaking, you see that in New Hanover County, we've got literally 1/3 Republican, 1/3 Democrat, 1/3 unaffiliated. This is a community where in order to get along with folks, in order to get work done, you got to have a purple mentality on a lot of things. Now, Chris, don't misunderstand. I mean, I'm a proud, lifelong Republican, but I'm also somebody who wants to work with people regardless of their political persuasion.
You've got to. And I mean, it's hard. You can't just throw a blanket over everything out there and say, I believe in this thing because of this. And you got to look at it situationally. And what is the bigger impact? What is the bigger thing at play? And sometimes that might be on the left side, or sometimes it might be on the right side. But what makes the most sense?
Well, we're too frequently willing to categorize people and ideas into these buckets, and it's more complicated than that.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, compromise is not a dirty word. Compromise is something that is an essential part of life. Now, there are certain things, Chris, that I'm not going to compromise on, but that needs to actually be a pretty limited list of things. Not everything is so dire that you can't work with somebody on. So the reason that I brought all that up is because while the Republican Party made a unanimous recommendation for me to become the next county commissioner, it would only work if the other 4 county commissioners, and there were 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans that were sitting there, could agree that I was the person that was right for the job. And because I had worked with all of them for a long time, including the folks that aren't on the same side as me, which I hate that, right? We're all on the same side. We have different ideas about some policy items, but we're on the same side as one another. But Jonathan Barfield and Rob Zappel, my friends, my coworkers, my fellow commissioners, they knew me, and they knew that I was a person that was willing to reason. They knew that I was a person that was willing to work with them on items that were important to them. And ultimately, I was proud beyond belief that whenever that recommendation came from the Republican Party and it went to all those other commissioners, that they all said, Dane, you're the one that we want. We're going to vote in favor of you. And I was a little bit green about politics, still am. So that morning, whenever there was the vote, I still wasn't quite sure. I said, they've all brought me here to humiliate me. My mom's here. My kids are here. My wife is here. But they all did exactly what they said they were going to do. And they said, we want Dane to serve with us up here on the dais. And that was in April. I told this story whenever I gave my speech, basically thanking everybody for coming out and whatever else, but it really, I think, bears repeating. April 17th was the day that I was sworn in, 2023.
Got it.
And April 18th, 2013 was the day that my wife and I were married. And the reason that that's significant is because my wife and I got married at the old courthouse in downtown Wilmington, which is where we hold our commission hearings. So literally separated
on
by
your 10-year anniversary.
10 years.
Yes.
Where I had gotten married to the love of my life. I took a new oath to become New Hanover County Commissioner. Whenever you say all this stuff, that's why I say it's too crazy for me to tell you why I'm surprising. I can't believe that it happened, but here I am, and here I'm doing it in combination with everything else that I'm doing.
Man, it's such a cool story. And there's this Steve Jobs quote that I'm not going to say right. I'm going to paraphrase it. But I got elected to give a speech to my MSA program at the commencement. And I was like, I don't know anything, so I'm just going to quote Steve Jobs because he seems like a pretty good dude.
Smart.
He's done some stuff, right? But one of his quotes was, you don't know where the future's going to take you. You don't know how you're going to connect the dots.
Right.
But, you have to follow your instinct. You have to follow your intuition. And it's funny, your story is looking back, all the work that you did, you never would know how those dots would connect. No. And the connection point is, where you're sitting today.
Yeah.
And it's like, the harder you work, the luckier you get. You do right. You do good by people and you help people, and good things happen to good people. I mean,
I couldn't agree with you more. And truly, whenever you say where I sit right now, I mean literally where I sit right now. I mean, the fact that I'm the sort of person that somebody with a podcast would call me and say, I want you to show up on my podcast and talk. I'm still a little bit stunned about that.
I'm stunned. I'm sitting here doing this. Man.
I mean, it's really cool though, and I take it seriously for that reason.
Heck yeah.
Because there's a bunch of this that was in my control, but a bunch more that was beyond my control. But to your point, and I say something almost identical to that if you work hard, you're kind to other people, you're going to ultimately get good results as a consequence of that. If you do just a couple of things, you're going to probably be okay. not everything will work out, but a lot of stuff will work out.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely believe in the power of positive thinking. I definitely believe that if you choose to believe that something can happen, it's more likely for it to happen.
Absolutely.
Now, you can have a mystical component to that, a spiritual component to that, or you can just have a practical component to that. It's maybe some combination of all of those things. But I really do believe that positive thinking leads to great results for everybody. It's also who people want to do business with.
Exactly, man.
Nobody wants to do business with negative folks. Sorry to all the negative folks. I'm sure you're great, but you'd be better if you were positive.
Yeah. And I don't know if this would make me a good or a bad politician, whatever, but not that that's any goal I have. But I always say the best deal is a mutually beneficial deal.
Yeah.
Because if someone feels that they're not like in the right, or they're getting slighted, or like, oh, this guy's like taking advantage of me, it's not going to last.
No, you're right. In law, we say at a mediation or a settlement otherwise that the best deal is the one where everybody walks away feeling a little bit bad about what happened, but ultimately can live with it.
Right.
You're going to have to accept as part of life that you're never going to get 100. Okay, let me not say never. You will sometimes get 100% of what you want.
Right.
Most of the time you won't. And you need to recalibrate your expectations for your life to say that's okay. And actually the greater good, fellow man, all of that sort of stuff. And I'm not trying to sound too hippy-dippy here, but I really do believe in this, that if we can find those commonalities, it's a rising tide.
Heck yeah. And man, I just, we talked a little bit about this, but I've always been someone that's avoided politics.
Yeah.
I like truly, and I truly say, I know that this isn't right, but the ignorance is bliss type thing. It's like, whenever I turn on the news, whenever I'm reading stuff, I'm just like, first of all, I don't even know if any of this is real. Like, what's real? I have to like think about it, which I got enough to worry about.
We're getting deeply philosophical.
Right?
I like it.
But
just so that everyone knows, it is just the bourbon that we're having. There were no magic mushrooms or anything else that were involved.
Oh man, that would. But yeah. So I mean, to the politics side, like I've always kind of like tried to stray away from it. Don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, everything you do in life, there's some type of political aspect to it. And politics is a lot of people just think it's like a dirty word.
Yeah.
It's like when you say, oh, politics, everybody's like, oh, politics. But politics, I mean, how would you define it? Maybe you can like define it better.
I think you're doing a great job with it. Here's the reality about politics from my perspective. It is an expression of ultimately the most base human instincts.
Okay.
And some of those are good and some of those are bad.
Right.
We're motivated to look out for ourselves.
Yep.
We're motivated to look out for our tribe. And ultimately, politics is a reflection of that.
Absolutely.
But the higher thinking is to recognize that your baser instincts are not the ones that you need to always lean into.
Exactly.
But there is a higher calling and being that you can achieve by essentially saying, I can sublimate self a little bit for the benefit of my brother, for the benefit of my sister.
Right.
And I don't need to get 100% of the win every time. I want to get it where it really matters. But in other instances, maybe it's important to you and I'm willing to compromise and negotiate on that.
Yeah.
In this community, again, you have to do that. But I think that you need to do that everywhere.
What type of politics do you do at home with your kids when you're
exactly
trying to get them to bed or when you're trying to get them to shower?
Every day, whether you realize it or not.
Exactly.
It's just easier to call it something red or blue whenever you have it in these, again, discrete buckets. Red bucket, blue bucket. I am more than my red bucket. And so is everyone else.
Yeah.
And we don't do a good job anymore of figuring out how to talk to one another despite those differences.
Yep.
And maybe that's just like one of those, I'm trending into boomer status. And
you're nowhere near that, man. Nowhere near that.
Things seem to have changed in some ways. At least there was a perception that I have about the past was that people were able to say, you and I don't agree with one another, but we're still going to get together and be friends.
Yep.
It's harder for people to do that now. And I think that polarization is a consequence of social media.
Oh my gosh.
It's a consequence of 24-hour news.
Yep.
You said that you don't watch it, you don't pay attention to it. Chris, let me tell you.
I know it's so bad.
I am deeply involved in local politics. I do not pay attention to politics beyond local politics.
What can you do to control it? It's the serenity, or it's the focus on the things you can control, and
serenity now.
Serenity now. But So, but and that's why I love small business.
Yeah.
Because I believe that small business owners can have that positive impact
Yep.
on a community, right?
Yep.
Like a small business owner has a family. They can hire other people that have a family. And like you said, big corporations are crucial, right? Like, and I would never discount, the GE, the Corning, the Live Oak, those big businesses here.
We need them, grateful
we
for
need them, and they're awesome.
Yeah.
They provide so much. But, like you said, 80% of the businesses here
Yep.
are small businesses.
Yep.
And when you think about it from that, if you can be proactive to help that group of people, that filters all the way down to everybody, right?
Well, you're exactly right. And it's also the sort of thing that would help us be better in both business and politics if we could look to one another and say, hey, we've got a mutual need, a transactional one or otherwise.
Right.
I'm a small business. I provide a service. You need that service. And really what you think about issue X is irrelevant to the equation.
Right.
If we were able to better do that, we'd do better business and we'd do better politics with one another. But it's also why that small business piece is so important, because it's a relationship game.
Heck yeah.
Most of the time, somebody's doing business with a small business because they've identified them as somebody that they want to do business with, somebody that they can trust to do good business.
Yep.
And again, that's part of why I think that nonprofit volunteer piece is so critical, because whenever people look to you and see that you're engaged
Yep.
for some non-monetary reasons in your community,
Right.
that's going to help to suggest to your potential clients, your potential customers, the depth of your commitment to the community. That's part of
Absolutely.
why I do what I do.
Yeah. I mean, and I truly, like I said, when it comes to politics, I'm situational. There's different situations that call for different, but I'm a businessman. I'm pro business, and I believe that a lot of the systemic issues that we have in society are, and they're all in each community. The same problems that we have in this community is very similar to the problems that you have in the community across the country.
Right.
Small business can solve so many of those
man.
issues.
Economic opportunity
It's
is
just-
one of the most critical things that we need, that we can never have enough of.
Exactly. So, I mean, I really like, being pro business, but then also having empathy and being a real life human being, that there are some situations where you have, there's people,
Yep.
we're people, like it's a community. And when you're sitting in, somewhere else, you're sitting in the ivory tower of corporate America, or, wherever you are, you don't have that connection. So it's easy to make a what I would consider a poor decision that has a negative impact on small biz.
Definitely. And let me say, one of the things that's really interesting about being a local politician, and obviously I know politicians always say this, but I hate being called a politician.
I know, because it's like been a dirty, it's like a dirty word.
Public servant is what I try to stick with.
There you go.
But we at the local level impact folks' lives way more than people realize, and in many ways more than what you're seeing in DC or even Raleigh.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of the little rules and regulations that impact you, that allow you to run a business effectively, efficiently, are being set at the local level. So one of the commitments that I bring to this job is, clearly government has an obligation to provide basic infrastructure, rules and regulations.
Right.
We don't want people just doing whatever with no consequences.
Some framework and some
I'm
and
not
some support.
an anarchist,
Right,
obviously.
right.
But it is also true that government can totally get in the way, and it can get in the way of business. And if it gets in the way of small business in particular, it's not just something that you put on a line item
Right.
that says cost of doing business. No, it's whether or not you can survive.
Right. It's
As-
whether or not I can feed my family.
Yes.
Or hire an employee. Yeah.
Some of those rules and regs, and I don't mean to be some conspiracy theorist, but it's true. A lot of the rules and regs that are set at the federal level and even at the state level sometimes benefit big business, because it's easy for them to absorb the costs that are associated with those things. It's a
Right.
lot harder for smaller businesses to do that.
Right.
So that's why it's really important that politicians of whatever variety, at whatever level, make sure that the things that we implement really are achieving their intended purpose and not an unintended purpose, and allow small businesses to operate. Truly, without small businesses, I don't know where we would be. I don't want to actually live in a society that doesn't have small businesses. That society where it's just large corporations,
That's how it doesn't work.
where it's just government managed business. There's a couple of words for that.
I know.
that exist.
I was about
Let's
to
not,
say it.
let's
And I
not
was like,
say
I'm not
it
even
so that
gonna
we don't say those. So
I know.
we don't want to be those people. But actually, entrepreneurship, free enterprise,
Free market capitalism.
free market capitalism is God's blessing on
Absolutely.
one of many on America. And I'm so glad that we take that seriously in New Hanover, Wilmington. We, I think, have leaders that recognize that. From what I've seen, from what I've done with the people that are involved, they get it. It doesn't matter where they are. They recognize we need to make sure that small business has the opportunity to operate. And it's part of why we're, I think, really working hard on promoting. Come to this area.
Absolutely.
Start your business here. Bring your business here. We're ready for you.
Yep, we absolutely are.
I'm ready to hire you, or you're ready to hire me in either law or insurance.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
You're ready to provide some accounting and other services to them. And
Absolutely.
yeah, let's go.
Let's do it, man. You know, I think we're right at the tail end there. So I think that's a great way to conclude. But I think we should cheers to Deb and cheers to both of us and everybody. So
Cheers. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah,
This was a lot of fun.
yeah, it's been a pleasure.
I think that'll work.
That was awesome.
Can we print it?
Clear. Dude, that was one of the best ones.